Okay, in the name of Allah, the compassionate, merciful, dear students, student teachers, dear colleagues, I hope everything is okay with your lives and your studies. The second session, or a quick and short lesson using technologies and electronic devices. I tried to provide you a quick and short lesson on materials development. This is the second actually topic in the second session, in the second week, which focuses on the topic of materials in English language teaching, issues and functions. Today we are going to talk about the major issues that we need to be familiar with, and also the functions of materials in language teaching and learning, or actually the functions, the purposes for which we study materials development and we involve ourselves in the practice of materials development, and the benefits and advantages of materials development for language teachers and also for students. So here, as you can see, materials development includes materials development, designing, preparing materials, and it also includes materials analysis and evaluation. Sometimes you may see that it's not possible for a teacher to develop his own materials for each individual class. But you know that because the students are different, because of individual differences and difference in the context and difference of actual classes and actual learners, their backgrounds, their first language background, their socio-historical, socio-cultural background, and many other things. So students need to study the textbooks and materials which are based on their own needs, materials which are responsive to their own needs. So if there are many textbooks, that all textbooks are of high quality, they should be geared to, they should be actually considered based on the needs of the students. Not all high quality materials are good, for example, for primary school students or low-level proficiency students. Not all high-quality textbooks which have been designed for advanced learners are good for advanced learners in Iranian context, because you should consider students' proficiency level, students' motivation, student needs and purposes. Or not all textbooks are good for students of different disciplines. So what you need is to even develop materials, high quality developed materials should be analyzed and should be evaluated and should be modified by the teachers based on the needs and purposes of individual classes and also actual learners in each class. So materials development necessarily includes materials analysis and evaluation. Let me tell you what is the difference between analysis and evaluation. Analysis is something quantitative, and it is something physical. It means that, for example, you analyze a textbook to see whether you can find reading comprehension activity, writing activity or not. But evaluation talks about the quality of that activity. It talks about the effectiveness of that activity, the quality of that activity. So sometimes in analysis you see that yes, there was reading comprehension text, and the text in terms of their size and volume actually are sufficient enough. But what about in terms of the quality? Are they genre-based? Are they discourse-oriented? Are they responsive to students' needs or not? Analysis is something quantitative, evaluation is subjective, and qualitative analysis is quantitative and objective. Then sometimes you need to evaluate because there are different materials because of the purpose of the students, needs of the students. You think that from among different materials you need to have selection, or from different activities and passages in the textbooks you need to have selection based on the needs of a student, based on the levels of the students. Okay, so the other one is even material use. So it does not mean that when we have a high quality materials, so all teachers can use the materials appropriately. Sometimes the materials are high quality, they are genre based, they are discourse oriented and purpose based, they are research informed, they are informed by modern theories of language teaching and learning and education theories, but the teacher is not able to use them appropriately. For example, the teacher uses passages, reading comprehension passages, instead of using them for comprehension, for interaction and critical thinking. The teacher uses them for teaching, for example, vocabulary, merely simply for vocabulary items. So the material use is critical, it is sensitive to the teacher's knowledge and ability of materials evaluation and materials development. The other important point is that when we talk about materials development, it doesn't mean that materials development is an activity and ability in hand of materials developers. No, materials developing is the something which should be done by the teachers themselves. As I mentioned, in each class, a student and learners are different, so they have particular and special needs and purposes. So that's why that each teacher should be materials developer in terms of materials evaluation, in terms of material use, material selection, because the classes are different, the learners are different. So materials development, evaluation, selection should happen in each class or each group of learners. So who can actually do that? The teacher. Okay, so materials developers are not the people authorized to develop materials for language teachers, but the teachers should develop materials for themselves, because their students, the learners are different with different purposes and different needs and different abilities. Materials development is a field of study. When we say something is a field of study, it means that it is an independent, self-standing field of study. It has its own knowledge base. It has its own actually theories. It has its own research journals, research activities, research areas and topics. So it is a self-standing field of study. It is not subordinate to teaching and learning. It has its own field of study. Then by field of study, it means that we should study field of study. We should explore materials development. We should explore materials development, and we should study the theoretical, actually, and different research findings on materials development. Practical activity means that, as I mentioned, each class is different, each group of individuals are different, so with their own needs, learning needs, and also purposes. So a teacher not only should be familiar with the field of study of materials development, theoretical points, concept, themes, ideas, and information about or findings, research findings or materials development. He should practically be involved in the practice of actual materials development. For example, when the teacher want to teach students, junior high school students. So they should know consider the level, proficiency level of his students, the needs of his students, the interest of his students, and many other things related to their students, to their background knowledge, to background language, and things like that. And they should practically involve himself or herself in materials evaluation and material selection. It is not only a field of study, but it is a practical activity. And most importantly, as a teacher, materials development is a space and opportunity for teacher professional development. Okay, you may ask how a teacher can develop professionally, can develop into a professional teacher when he involves himself in the practice of materials development, or when he studies materials development. The answer is this. The idea is this. When you study materials development are based on different theories. So when studying materials development, you need to study different theories of education, theories of learning, and you need to study different trends of teaching. For example, you need to familiarize yourself with genre-oriented teaching, discourse-oriented teaching, purpose-based teaching. You should familiarize yourself with the literature. You need to review the literature. So when we talk about teaching methods, okay, so the same thing happened in materials development. When we talk about, for example, classroom practices, again, the same thing happened in materials development. So for practical teaching, teaching practice in classes, for actually materials development, for your study of teaching methods, learning theories. Okay, all the points and ideas that you studied there, they again are true about materials development. So materials development is another actually space and opportunity for you to develop professionally into professional and high quality teachers. Because when you develop materials, when you are evaluating the textbooks, for example, the reading comprehension section of the textbook, you should see whether that actually that unit or section on reading comprehension is based on, for example, sociocultural theoretical perspective. Is it based on pushed output or interaction hypothesis or not? So you should be familiar with them, and you are given the space and opportunity to familiarize yourself with the all important issues and topics in language teaching, and more importantly in education, any kind of education. So think about materials development as a field of study, a self-standing field of study, a practical activity, and a space and opportunity for teacher professional development. It means that materials developers are not peoples isolated from language teachers. Language teachers are materials development. It means that a language teacher should be a materials development, should have the identities, the abilities, the skills, the expertise of materials developer. Okay. The point is this, that when we know that what is the significance, what is the importance and centrality of material development in L2 education, what are the major issues that we should focus on when we talk about materials development or materials development in L2 education. I have provided you with a checklist. Okay, so I have evaluated one of the, I think it is American English 5, published by Oxford OUP, and this is my checklist that I have actually prepared. There may be some pitfalls and shortcomings in this checklist, but I think it is comprehensible. When you are actually evaluating, selecting, or developing materials, for example, you see that whether the passage or the tasks you are inserting in your textbook, designing and developing and putting them in your textbooks, do they cognitively involve the students? Or before that, I haven't written that here because it is broad enough and large enough that all students should know, student teachers and teachers should know that, first of all, everything that you know should be backed, which is supported by a theory or theory of learning. For example, the activities and passages that you have included in the textbook or have been included in the textbook and you are evaluating is it cognitively and effectively involving or interactionally involving your students? Okay, so this is based on modern theories, sociocultural structuralism. So constructivism and social-cultural theory. Structuralists do not focus on cognitive involvement or affective involvement. They focus on only, or behaviorists focus on practice and practice. So you should be familiar with the modern theories or things like community of practice, things like 21st century skills, and many other modern theories that in the previous semester you reviewed and some of you provided some presentations. One of the important points that criterion of checklist is cognitive involvement. Does the material or the sections of materials involve students cognitively or involve the thinking? Does them actually involve them effectively involve their emotion? We are human being, learners are human being. Okay, so the material should involve them effectively, emotionally. Does the material focus on meaning? Because we said that interaction, communication, and language is using meaning options. Okay, so you learn how to use meaning options, how to use meaning choices. And the other one is it attend to pragmatics? Pragmatics again refers to meaning making choices. Why we prefer some choices instead of other choices. Then is it based on collaborative learning? Okay, so in the real world we should have collaboration, we should have cooperation, because people are always in interaction with each other. People used to interact with each other, even if they write something or if they write a textbook, so they are collaborating or interacting with the readers and addresses. The other important is that does it talk about or include a spoken grammar, or it only focuses on written grammar or bookish grammar or a formal grammar? So, or sometimes actually do they provide practice only and wrongly practice for a spoken practice for written grammar? It means that they actually provide us written grammar and they ask us to use written grammar in speaking activities, speaking practices, especially in Iranian textbooks. They do not provide learners with a spoken grammar, but they insert written grammar, and they then ask a student to have a spoken practice of that written grammar. Then intercultural awareness is important, because we said that culture controls pragmatics and affects pragmatics, which is the most important perspective of language. We need to be familiar with intercultural awareness, intercultural actually dimension, and learners are different. Okay, the textbook should be sensitive to learners' level of proficiency, their needs, their purposes, and also it should be sensitive to the identity of learners And more important than cognitive involvement, you should involve students' critical thinking. Then formulaic expressions or phraseology is important because language is not individual words put together to speak. Formulaic language is important. About 40% of language is formulaic language or phraseology, and unfortunately in most of the textbooks and also in many classes on, or teaching practices, teachers and actually policymakers and syllabus designers, curriculum developers, they forget about formulaic language. Unfortunately, the students do not learn formulaic language, so they learn individual words, and when they want to use the individual words, separated words, or isolated words, they they find themselves in trouble. Then, is it based on pushed output, or does it provide an opportunity for students to have pushed output, or to have output at least? Interaction and negotiation of meaning, free and controlled production, okay. Ways of presentation, again, this is very important, and this is the other items in that checklist. For example, does it talk only about grammatical correctness, or it talks about language appropriateness? Again, it is something referring to pragmatics. I have put it here in order to stress it and emphasize the importance of this point. Units of language, is it discourse or individual sentences? Okay, discourse is the whole piece of language. For example, people, when they talk about something, their speech should be considered not as individual sentences. Again, language is used for transaction. Transaction means like exchanging information, or interaction. Interaction means what is developing personal relationship. For example, here I am speaking. My purpose is not to, for example, transmit some pieces of words or vocabulary items. I am actually developing and creating a kind of relationship with you, because to affect, to influence, to have an effect on your actually feeling, emotion, your cognition, to learn something or think about something. Then authenticity is very important. Naturalness and genuineness, or the text are, or task or materials are artificially made or concocted. Again, speech acts are important. Okay, these 27 and sometimes many other, a few other actually criteria should be developed when you are evaluating or designing and developing your materials. It means that if you are asked, or if you wish to, for example, evaluate or select from among different textbooks, you should see whether the materials are able to cognitively involve the students, to make a student think about something, make a students think critically about something, or does it actually entice or trigger their emotional actually abilities, senses. Does it focus only on formal language, or it focuses on meaning or communication? It actually focuses on pragmatics or not? Okay, things like that. These are the criterion or criteria that you should actually consider when you are evaluating with selected textbook. Okay, the rest of the this semester and other sessions will be devoted to considering these criteria. For example, one session we may think about affective involvement, cognitive involvement, and meaning, focus on pragmatic significance of collaborative learning. And these are the criteria, and more importantly, when it comes to analyze and interpret or involve ourselves practically in materials development, this is one of the objectives of this course. For example, you can see this is Vision 3 English for Schools پایه 12 دوره دوم متوسطه, actually developed and designed and used by teachers for Iranian senior high school students. We come to, for example, analyze and evaluate this textbook or these series of textbooks. For example, even these photos and pictures and these things actually will be analyzed considering theories of learning and also the criteria I mentioned here, the checklist I mentioned here. These materials will be actually evaluated. So, for example, we see these sections of the textbooks in order to practically involve ourselves in the practice of materials development using the ideas in the field of study. We evaluate these textbooks to see or check for the quality and effectiveness of the materials. Okay. Dear teachers, please think about the point mentioned this session, and for the next session, please write or record your voice, whatever comes to your mind about materials development. If you're interested on providing new suggestions on materials development, or if you want to evaluate general evaluation, not considering these checklists and criteria. If you have anything in your mind about materials development, about material use in Iranian context, about the activity and the field of the study of materials development, or anything comes to your mind, or any idea, any topic, any themes of your interest, and you want to share and you want to talk about. So you have all of you may have experience of teaching, and some of you may not have experience of teaching, but you have experience of being in teaching classes, experience as learner. You have observe your teachers in different classes and different textbooks that use, or different ways that your teachers have used the textbooks. Sometimes the textbooks are of high quality, but the teachers have not used them appropriately. For example, sometimes the teachers have used the textbooks on grammar for individual sentences and not for developing your ability for discourse or interactive skills, not for speaking, or they have not used grammar for meaning making choices for communication. They have taught grammar for the sake of grammar. Things like that. And the other important point, let me remind you that as I mentioned in Iranian classes and Iranian textbooks, they always try to focus on formal written grammar, and if you see some dialogues, if you see some interactional activities, the conversation is based on written grammar, not a spoken grammar. So you can talk about these things and the other things that you're interested in. So for the next session, please write down and discuss the points of your interest about materials and material use, materials evaluation, materials development. You can write them down, or you can record your voice and you can send. Okay, I'm waiting for your activities. I'm waiting to hear your actually voices through voice recordings. Use please technologies and electronic devices to exchange, to contribute to the course. Thank you. I will back to you uh, in a few days. Bye until next session. Thank you.